What will happen if Joe Biden defeats Donald Trump in November and then you get a 2.5 or close to 3 month transitional period during which Donald Trump is a very angry, lame duck? That's the first question today in audience questions. David, what do you believe the transition period would look like if Donald Trump loses? So, first of all, I love the question and I'm glad to explore it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We first need to vote, and Joe Biden first needs to win before we have to concern ourselves with what a transition period would look like. First of all, in the immediate, I would imagine a delayed concession. I think that if it is very, very close on election night, Donald Trump will not concede. And if it is a blowout, Donald Trump may also not concede under the guise that it's too obviously fake. Trump couldn't possibly have lost by so much. So I think regardless of the results, there's a good chance Trump does not concede. Now, just a reminder about concession. Concession is legally meaningless. Concession is a formality. It's done to show good faith, to signal the beginning of a peaceful transition of power, and its norms and conventions and all that different stuff. But the concession, legally speaking, is not relevant. It is true, however, that if, for example, a Republican concedes, you may see Republican secretaries of state who might get much more involved in challenging results with recounts or whatever, maybe not do it. So while legally not significant, concessions can still signal to governors and secretaries of state around the country, how should you react and what should you do next? So Trump will, in all likelihood, if it's close, and it's likely to be close, and Trump loses, Trump will likely say he was cheated or that it was rigged. We only have to look at 2016. Remember, in 2016, Trump won, and he still to this day insists that the results were false and that it was rigged against him because losing the popular vote did not sufficiently placate Donald Trump's massive ego. You will probably see a few Republicans who would support Trump in claiming that it was rigged, but my belief is that most Republicans are going to largely accept the results if indeed Joe Biden wins. Then I wouldn't be surprised if during the transition period, Trump doesn't invite Joe Biden to the White House. This is a completely standard thing that's done. The Bushes invited the Obamas invited the Trumps. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Donald Trump break with that convention as well. But then what really matters about the transitional period is going to be what does Donald Trump try to do legislatively and via executive order and in terms of judges and appointments and nominations? And what does he actually get done? Because a lame duck Trump that is furious that he lost and believes it was rigged or claims it was rigged is going to be even more brazen and even more unscrupulous than we've seen him be. I would expect a ton of executive orders, some legal, some not legal. I would expect pardons that benefit him or his interests in some direct or indirect way. And I would expect a scaling up of vicious, vicious attacks against his political opponents. If Republicans controlled the House, and by the way, this is such an important reason why the midterms mattered so much when Democrats took the House. If Republicans controlled the House, you would have the risk of a lame duck Trump doing Wisconsin-style legislation, like when Scott Walker lost the governorship in Wisconsin, Republicans in the legislature tried to weaken the office of the governor for the incoming Democrat to be able to do much less. If Republicans controlled the House and Trump loses in November, you would likely see the same type of attempt to limit the power of the office of the presidency. It's not going to happen because Democrats took the House in 2018. In terms of protests and aftermath, in terms of aftermath that would include protests and unrest, I do think it depends on the margin of victory. I believe that a huge Biden victory would set Trump off, but that it would really deflate the sails of the MAGA people. A narrow victory by Biden will more credibly let Trump claim it was rigged. And I would absolutely expect militia types, patriot types, et cetera, to come out and protest, and there could certainly be violence and unrest. I do think that Mitch McConnell will keep his eye on the ball and try to rapidly get as many judges confirmed as possible during a transition period for Trump. McConnell has been effective at doing this. Legislation is unlikely, again, because you need the House, and a democratically controlled House is not going to give any big legislative concessions to a lame duck Trump that they've just defeated. So I would expect a very messy November and December. I would expect lawsuits, maybe recounts, and I don't think that they will actually go anywhere if Joe Biden wins. Over that transition period, media will start to ignore Trump more and more and focus on who is going to be in Biden's cabinet, who from our allies are coming back to the United States and saying, we welcome you, we are glad that Trump is leaving, and that will only further enrage Donald Trump. If I'm missing anything, let me know.